Okay, and here's the funny part when I was reading it. Um, the only staff member to have not received a wage increase is our web designer, Danny Taro, a local community member and longtime Arthur staff member. It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? What is really shocking about this one is that it seems to be anonymous students who theoretically are part of the student newspaper because they pay a levy to Trent University in order to be owners in this levy group, which is Trent Arthur. Just like so many other levy groups that are part of universities, it's how the Arthur gets the majority of their funding. And it's honestly a great system because you get access to so many services by paying your levy fees as a student. And hey, you might not use all of those services yourself, but for a lot of them, they're there if you want to engage with them, and they serve a greater purpose. For example, Trent Radio. You might not listen to Trent Radio, but it also serves a great purpose, and it is able to employ students and allows you to get involved with being a broadcaster if you are interested in that. And hey, not everybody's interested in that. Similarly, the Arthur, if you're interested in journalism, if you're interested in the news, and hey, if you're just interested in video games, there's a chance for you to write about it as a student because you are helping fund journalism in your community, journalism that helps keep the Trent Student Union accountable and the Trent University itself accountable and the city of Peterborough accountable. So there's so many great reasons that you might want to pay a levy because you know what? The majority of what you're paying to Trent University, it doesn't go to levy groups. And I'm someone who believes also in free education. I think our post-secondary education systems should be free in Canada, but a gigantic amount of the money that you pay just goes to the university, and a very small chunk of that pie goes to levy groups. So why don't we redistribute the wealth in a way that benefits the students? Which is exactly what levy groups do. Now, there is a group here, an anonymous group, that is trying to defame the Trent Arthur, which is the student newspaper, in case you don't know. A message from our editors and board of directors concerning a recent disinformation campaign to make Arthur's levy refundable, perpetuated by anonymous members of the Trent University community. Democracy isn't democracy if it's based on lies. So yes, there are several groups, I guess, who have kind of hopped on this disinformation train. And one of them is the Memes of Trent U account. They are not the person who has made this literature, which has been distributed in the form of paper pamphlets all over campus, but they are someone who has a pretty sizable Instagram account, and they are spreading this disinformation anonymously because, they're an anonymous meme account. So I don't really know what their deal is over at Memes of Trent U. But I guess I don't know. They're not very good at like journalism, obviously, because they're a meme account and they don't know how to fact check things apparently as well. So pretty pathetic display on here. So this is just clipped right from the pamphlet. You can see this must be like a picture or a screenshot of a digital version of this pamphlet, and they're saying time for us to get political again. So I don't know. Memes tend to be political. I guess don't they're not very well versed in doing political memes. I'm not really sure. And like a cigarette. Okay. So here is the text on top is from Memes of Trent U, as you can see. This was also just posted to their stories. So as far as I know, I don't really care to go to their account right now. They have not posted it to their main feed where people can comment, but they've just posted it to their stories where you can reply, you can heart it, but you can't actually say, hey, you know what, this is disinformation and you should be more responsible with how you use your platform. I don't know if they've issued an apology or anything like that. If you are part of the memes of Trent Yu account, and you would like to talk about this, I would be interested in having a conversation with you. I don't really understand why you're taking disinformation at face value. And I sincerely hope that you are working on an apology. It says here that we love journalism, okay, but you're not very good at it. We love accountable journalism even more. Okay. Well, maybe you should, if you're gonna hold people accountable, this is the thing. If you want to hold people accountable, you have to demonstrate how they've caused harm, and you can't dabble in misinformation in order to hold people accountable, or else it's not gonna work. Reclamation is powerful, but when queer individuals reclaim slurs on public forums, especially slurs that do not belong to them / no longer apply, it can set a dangerous precedent of permissibility for that slur / cishet people feeling entitled to it. And no one should be mocked for disability ever. End of sentence. Okay. End sentence. They could use a period as to end the sentence, but here they've typed out end sentence. And okay, the last thing here they're saying is, if you feel differently about it, that's fine. For those that disagree, however, we've attached a link to sign the petition below. So they're actively trying to sign people up to sign this petition to essentially defund the Arthur. So here is what they're responding to, which is the original literature. How has Arthur impacted students? The Arthur has published articles in which the F slur has been included twice. They maliciously exposed a student for their disability in an article. This is not journalistic integrity. This is against the OHRC. What is the OHRC here? OHRC, Ontario Human Rights Commission, and AODA, which is Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities. Okay, so again, they're just making these claims. They're not saying where these articles exist or which exact article has exposed a student for their disability. So we are going to debunk this in a moment. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. How has Arthur treated its workers? That's a great question. I am, for full disclosure, I am part of the payroll for Arthur. So yes, I do have a bias, and yes, I'm not getting paid right now to do this work. This is separate of that, but I do have a bias. The Arthur pays me for my work. I am an employee of the Arthur. The Arthur does not meet the accessibility needs of their staff members and explicitly avoids addressing this. They have also spoken poorly of staff members, causing these staff members to quit as they were uncomfortable working in this hostile work environment. The majority of Arthur students are covered. Student staff are covered by TWSP, which I believe is the Trent Work Study Program. Nonetheless, the Arthur has not given employees who quit their severance pay. So, there's some gymnastics happening here. I don't know, like it says the majority of Arthur's staff are covered by TWSP, which is true, and then says, which is complete non sequitur here. Nonetheless, the Arthur has not given employees who quit their severance pay. Okay. I don't know what that has to do with being covered by the Trent Work Study Program. It doesn't really have anything to do with that. Is it a disgruntled former employee? It definitely gets that. You get that vibe, right? So, did a staff member get turfed? I mean, a staff member quit, right? And if they felt like they needed to quit, then they should quit, and they did. And it's these are kind of allegations that you could bring to the attention of the Arthur managers and board, but instead they are choosing this route of printing things without evidence and trying to distribute it all over campus. So last thing is, why did they increase their levy last year? Arthur increased their levy fee last year because they were in debt. They found a company bank account in negative funds. Your $12.89 is not being used to increase student staff wages. Your money is being used to cover their debts. So this is just like objectively not true. The Arthur is not in debt, and they have used the increased money to increase wages. Um, so it's really silly to print this because it's so easy to be like, nope. As a levy group, the Arthur also has to be transparent to its stakeholders, which are the students, and it's all documented in meeting minutes that are available publicly online. So it's really foolish to just go with this line. And again, this is a levy increase that the student population had to vote on and support in order for it to go through. So this levy increase was achieved through the democratic process, and this person is now trying to subvert that process. So lastly, there's the last one here saying, what does this mean for levy groups? By supporting this question, you are helping in setting a precedent for levy groups to be accountable for their outputs and encourage them to be ethical in their usage of student funding. Which, I mean, yeah, these are great causes to champion. People should be accountable, and we should do our best to be ethical. So memes of Trent Yu adding their own spin here, saying the key words for us here are accountability. If an institution is de facto given money to speak in ways we don't deem constructive, we should as students have the capacity to advocate for that use better. How is this group accountable? Which group? The anonymous Trent memes account or the anonymous group distributing these pamphlets? They're not accountable to anyone. And if they're saying here that they have the capacity to advocate for that use better, it's called writing a letter to the editor. You can just, if you don't like that a queer person used the F slur in their article that went through like 4 levels of editing before getting published, through like multiple levels, then you can write a letter to the editor and say, hey, you know what? I don't like how they use the F slur, and like your opinion would then be published, and you could publicly disagree in a way that doesn't try to defund your own newspaper, which is like the ridiculous part, right? And if you are on the fence about our prior opinions expressed / feel negatively as to how they were phrased, I personally suggest, okay, this part is the ridiculous part, reading some queer theory on the matter and how quickly awareness can turn into microaggressions and outright violence. Tact should be employed in all public forums when using delicate language, and that includes artistic ones. So they're literally like, if you disagree, read theory, which is just like, it's like just like ridiculous. Because a lot of the people who are part of the Arthur, are queer. They understand an intersectional lens. They're cultural studies students. They've read queer theory, and also, it's possible to even have an opinion about this without just going and reading theory. So, I would, I guess, suggest for this person, if they disagree with the Arthur, to read theory, because specifically theory about how not to peddle disinformation, and potentially theory on how to fact check information that you found on the ground or whatever at Trent University. So very strange. So Trent University, the Arthur newspaper, the editorial staff and the board of directors, they wrote this article in response to these allegations. And what I will say is that this is part of a trend of like woke scolding, and it's really unfortunate because it's something that we've talked about here, and it's something that is fracturing leftist unity, which is something we always talk about. Because the allegations here are using the language of social justice in order to hold Trent Arthur newspaper accountable, but they're not. But they're also dealing in misinformation, right? So it's like you can't say that you believe in social justice and then just like make up some shit and throw it at Arthur newspaper. That is not justice. That is not democracy. So the Arthur has done a great job replying to these allegations. I'll link it here in chat if you're maybe watching this later and you want to read it yourself. So the university has a levy system that funds a bunch of groups, including upport, Peterborough, Absinthe Magazine, Sustainable Agriculture and Food System Society, the Season Spoon Cafe. Some of the levy groups are refundable, and you can opt out of them. Some of the levy groups are non-refundable, like the Arthur. And there's also Kawartha Sexual Assault Clinic, Sadler House, Sustainable Trent, and Trent Radio. So the petition is to make Trent a refundable levy, so you can opt out if you so choose. However, I think that having journalism on campus is a service that it is essentially an essential service. It's an essential service. And it is something that I don't think you should have the ability to opt out of. The Arthur newspaper, over many, many years, has a long history since 1966 of being the independent student press at Trent University. And I think it would be really sad to move against that very important tradition. So they talk here about the Student Choice Initiative, which was something to do with Doug Ford's government trying to defund levy groups. I know the Arthur and really all levy groups across Ontario lost a bunch of their funding as a result of that. So what is, of course, the ironic part about woke scolds who are co-opting social justice language in order to hold organizations which are social justice based, like Arthur, accountable, is that they are doing the work for conservatives. There are conservatives who are part of the Trent community, probably ones that sit on the board of Trent University or the board of the TCSA or the city council of Peterborough, who are conservatives and would like to see the Arthur defunded because they are doing work that counteracts their goals, simply by printing the truth. It sometimes is just that easy. So Arthur is a training ground for journalism, and we don't have a journalism program at Trent University. So we are doing as good a job as we can in order to make sure that the quality of journalism, despite not having a journalist program, is there. And this is, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding says that, one of our co-editors last year, they won an award for the best student journalist in Canada. And again, we don't have a journalist program at Trent University. This is something that has just been like a grassroots movement, and people really essentially running their own journalism program outside of Trent University in order for people to get the experience to do great, fantastic quality stuff. So here we are, just like getting to the allegations here. Arthur has published articles in which the F slur has been included twice. So for one thing, I think there are a great many articles that publish the F slur, more than the two that they are citing here. Arthur, believe it or not, has a long history of being an alternative voice for queer and trans folks. And sometimes those trans folks or queer folks who feel as though the F slur can be used against them, they feel it is within their right to be able to use those words and reclaim those words as they see fit. Personally, I am also of that belief, and I think one weird thing that we're seeing evolve out of this new kind of like woke scold culture is people trying to police how you how you speak. You know, I personally don't say the F slur because I don't identify as queer, or I don't say the R slur because I don't feel as though you know, I have like a learning disability, but I can understand or sorry, I'm not like disabled, you know, anyways, that sounds really bad, but I don't use those words because I don't feel entitled to use them and in terms of my identity, you know? And I think it's an important conversation to have, but again, these are queer folks who feel as though they are reclaiming the words, and that to me is okay. Um, so the other allegation here, they maliciously exposed a student for their disability. Um, the complaint in question refers to this quote, or at least the people at Arthur think that it's referring to this quote because there has been a similar complaint about this specific text. Voting on the next agenda item, having to do with the establishment of a committee for the Student Award of Excellence, elicited further exasperation from the president. After Chair Rob Monaco asked for all of those in favor to motion, Lito Day audibly sighed, prompting Monaco to remind her, I have to ask, it's in the rules, in which the president replied, I'm not sighing at you, I'm sighing in general. So the allegations here are that this audible sighing is exposing someone for their disability. And I think an average person hearing this might say, well, I would need to understand why. Why somebody sighing and printing that they audibly sighed would be exposing them for their disability. Which disability in general? Anyways, this is something that they ended up taking to human resources at Trent, and they found that, you know what, this isn't an example of ableism. So it, you know, shouldn't be treated as such. It is upsetting. It is upsetting that like this is really the allegations. Like somebody sighed in a meeting and somebody printed in our newspaper that they sighed in a meeting, and therefore ableism. This is literally the level where we are at in terms of infighting, I think. Okay, so Arthur does not meet the accessibility needs of their staff members. This is honestly quite surprising, but you know, it is I think potentially a fair criticism. I would say if it is a fair criticism, this might not be the best way to go about it, because I think the folks at Arthur are quite open to change and making things as accessible as possible. So Arthur editorial board says that they are astonished to see reference to a private and internal conversation between staff and board members being alluded to wholly divorced from context. At Arthur, we strive to be an inclusive and welcoming space to all our staff members. We have numerous staff members who identify as disabled and work with them closely to ensure their needs are met. Of course, this requires communication from all parties. Yeah, and I will say also, as web designer, part of my goal in the previous semester was to make the Arthur website more accessible, which I never got an opportunity to do because I ended up getting, re-diagnosed with cancer and undergoing chemotherapy. But it still is part of my goal to make this website more accessible and really like as accessible as possible. So this is saying that it caused staff members to quit, and that, and I don't know, it is unfortunate, like if someone felt as though their needs as a disabled person were not being met to the point of having them quit. But given the outlandishness of some of these other allegations, like somebody sighed at a meeting and that's ableism, it's kind of like, okay, but like can we have some proof? So Arthur again is here saying that we were sad to lose some staff members this year, but we respect the decision of all staff members to remain at Arthur only as long as they wish. Should any decision, be it administrative or editorial, impact an employee's safety, dignity, or quality of life, or otherwise impede their ability to do work, we encourage them to bring this to our attention so that we can come to a favorable and collaborative resolution. Yeah, and I mean, like, that is kind of the best you can ask for. If somebody is trying in good faith to make something as like accessible for you as possible, and instead of kind of coming to them and having a resolution, you simply quit and start spreading fake news all over campus. Of course, like, that is, you're not going to get your way by using those tactics. I don't think, if your true goal is making things more accessible, well, that this is not really the way to achieve that goal, unfortunately. um the majority of Arthur students are paid by Trent Work Study Program. I think that's just like true. So nonetheless, the Arthur has not given employees who quit their severance pay. So, and then it goes into here saying that, they quit, so they're not entitled to severance pay under the Employment Standards Act of Ontario. And the board met about this and determined that no severance would be paid, as it is not standard practice, and there was no reason to make an exception in this case. Okay. So Arthur increased their levy fee because they were in debt. Again, this is something that's not true. They have faced financial hardships in the past. When I originally joined the Arthur, there was actually a lot of debt that some editorships had landed us in. However, they were able to recover financially by, unfortunately, having to print less. They were printing every other week instead of every week, and now actually we only print every month, because we want to focus on paying people for their journalism instead of making sure it gets to print when it can get to print, and also the website, and we can pay people better. So it sounds like someone who is mad at the world. They are mad at the world, and I feel really bad for them, because instead of, directing that energy somewhere useful, they are essentially trying to tear down someone who would like otherwise be their ally if they were to put this personal vendetta aside. And that often seems to be the case with like woke scoldery, is that people are attacking the only thing that they feel like they have power over, or potentially can like rally against to change. So there is definitely like a feeling like, hey, well, I can't change the world, but I can take a aggressive stance against someone online, or someone like the Arthur, who is going to be attempt to be accountable in good faith, but unfortunately these claims are not good faith. It seems to be the week for it. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think covering this is important, because it's a trend that we're seeing like everywhere. And there's just like mudslinging, just unnecessary mudslinging happening all over the place. And it's like, hey, I can't rip down the world, but I can rip down the people who are my closest allies and the organizations that are most closely aligned with my beliefs. But it's like, but to what end? It's doing the work of conservatives or the alt-right for them by simply just destroying ourselves from the inside. So super sad to see this. They found a company bank account in negative funds. So yeah, as I said, in 2017, there was a significant debt, and we were able to financially recover. However, I don't even know why this would be a big deal. If a company found itself in debt and you were one of the stakeholders in the company, would you not want to like help them recover out of their debt so that they could be in a better financial position and allocate that money to creating jobs for people who are like in your demographic? I don't know. I don't even know why they think that this is a good argument in the first place. If the Arthur was in debt, that would still be a noble way to use your money, because I mean you've essentially already used the money towards servicing your community, and now a debt is owed. So I can say from being there throughout this time that it has been through great hardship that people have been able to recover the Arthur newspaper from financial ruin. So it's honestly, if the Arthur deserves praise for anything, it's like, hey, we saved the student newspaper, and now that it's saved, there are people who are like, well, we must destroy it now. It's like, oh, okay. I love how also that their concern is like, the Arthur doesn't have enough money because they're in debt, which they're not, but also we need to defund the Arthur. It's like, oh, okay. Like, don't you think that will make it harder for us to operate if you're concerned with our financials? Anyways, it's just a lot of mental gymnastics. So they're saying here that your 1289 is not being used to increase student staff wages. Your money is being used to cover their debts. And that is just simply not true. We have instead been using the increased levy fee to increase staff wages. In 2021, 2022, all student staff were being paid $15 per hour, the provincial minimum wage at the time. This publishing year, our wages start at $16.50 for our junior journalists, copy editor, and communications coordinators, with our senior journalists earning $17.50 and our head journalists earning $18. Okay, and here's the funny part when I was reading it. The only staff member to have not received a wage increase is our web designer, Danny Taro, a local community member and longtime Arthur staff member. His wage remains at $18.50 per hour. So it is like kind of funny because according to this, I'm the highest paid person on Arthur staff, at least at an hourly rate. But the reason I get paid more is because I don't work very many hours. And if you wanted to hire a web designer, of which I am not professionally trained, if you wanted to hire a professional web designer, they're gonna charge you a lot more than like the $18.50 per hour, and I'm entitled to work like 8 hours a week. If there's any work to be done, which in many cases there is not. And not only that, but I missed an entire semester of work because I was taking leave for chemotherapy and cancer treatment. So they, saved a bunch of money. It's not like I have like additional benefits or anything from this job. It's not like, like I was still getting paid during my cancer treatment. No, it's literally just like a side hustle for me. And, it's basically a passion project that I'm super proud to be a part of because Arthur is doing fantastic work. So anyways, I thought this was just like funny. Of course, like I also don't know why they name dropped me. They didn't name drop anybody else, including the editors. But they decided to name drop me here, I guess. I don't know. Just so everyone could maybe direct their hate towards me. Maybe they know I can take it, you know. You have an enemy. I have probably a few enemies. I don't know if they're involved with this particular scandal. If anyone wants to come at me for making $18.50 an hour as like a 34-year-old cancer survivor, then they can come at me. Like I'm working like very modest hours for very modest pay, and it's not my main gig. Like it's not I'm not taking up a significant portion of the budget at all. You probably spend more than 8 hours. Well, that's the thing. There are times when I like work 0 hours, and there's times when I'm like I work like 40 hours a week, because, or at least before, because there was like such a like influx of work, so it's not even like I'm working consistently, but they budget a lot more money than they end up paying me. So come at me, bro. Rolling in the deep. Yeah. Where's my gold teeth? Exactly. Um You are helping set a precedent for levy groups to be accountable for their outputs and encouraging them to be ethical in their usage of student funding. Um, so, I mean, you're not. You're actually setting a precedent that you can use disinformation to take down an essential service that employs people in your demographic. If you're a queer disabled person at Trent University, you're essentially advocating here for queer disabled people to no longer be employed by the Arthur. So it's very bizarre. This is a horrible precedent to be setting. And nobody can be held accountable by disinformation. So that's essentially it. I think they're citing the criminal code here, saying that this is like libelous, and like I don't think any legal action is going to be taken. Nobody wants that, but I mean, at the very least, maybe the people who are aiming these allegations at the Arthur could stop or apologize, since they have been thoroughly debunked.